On this Monday night, critical Canadian exports hit with new punishing tariffs. The U.S. president's expanding plan to put America first.
Tariffs are going to help.
Where does this leave Canada, one of America's largest steel and aluminum suppliers? The wide-ranging ripple effects of tariff threats.
That uncertainty is not healthy.
As Canadian businesses already start cutting back. The brains of London cabbies, why they're attracting the attention of Alzheimer's researchers. Plus, it's cuddly and comforts colicky babies.
Just to help the other people.
The Made in Canada teddy bear, now on the world stage.
Global National with Donna Friesen.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. The U.S. president is continuing to keep his allies off balance. Late today, Donald Trump made good on the threat he came out with yesterday and says he will impose 25% tariffs on imports to the U.S. of steel and aluminum. It will not be immediate. They will take effect, he says, on March 4th. This will have a big impact on Canada because we produce a lot of steel and aluminum, and the U.S. is our biggest market.
It's a big deal. It's a big deal. This is the beginning of making America rich again. It's 25% without exceptions or exemptions, and that's all countries, no matter where it comes from.
Jackson Proskow is in Washington. Jackson, we've been waiting all day to see if this would happen. What more did Trump say?
Hi, Donna. Well, it's worth remembering that Trump has long had his eye on steel and aluminum tariffs under the guise of national security concerns, and that's exactly what he's doing again tonight. These tariffs are an extension of what's known as a Section 232 investigation. That's the same national security tool that Trump used when he leveled similar tariffs on Canada back in 2018. Now, back then, it was part of a pressure tactic as part of NAFTA renegotiations. This time around, as you mentioned, no exceptions, no exemptions, at least according to him. Trump went on to say that the tariffs are a big deal that will make America rich again. And he's doing all of this at this really delicate time where we're in this temporary reprieve with Canada over his previous tariff threats of blanket universal tariffs. These seem to be layered on top of that. It's worth keeping in mind that Canada, Brazil, and Mexico are the top suppliers of steel to the U.S., and Canada is the top supplier of aluminum. And analysts warn if this goes ahead, it will all but certainly result in higher prices.
We would expect them to see, higher prices passed on to consumers, selling fewer products, and to actually be put at a little bit of a disadvantage relative to competitors, particularly when they sell the products for export in other countries. So if we make cars in the U.S. and sell them to Canada, higher steel prices are bad in that exchange.
Here's the other issue, Donna. Experts say the U.S. simply doesn't have the capacity to produce all the types of steel and aluminum they need domestically. And by the way, Trump says he's also looking at tariffs on cars, chips, and pharmaceuticals. And he says he doesn't mind if countries retaliate for this.
Interesting. Jackson, did he say why he's announcing this today to take effect March 4th? And does this potentially mean that those blanket tariffs he's threatened on all other Canadian exports to the U.S. are off the table?
It certainly doesn't mean that the other tariffs are off the table. I'm sure that's something Canadian officials will be pressing for clarity on here in the coming days. It really feels like an extension of the high-pressure negotiating tactics that he's been engaged in for the past few days, past few weeks, really, since he took back the Oval Office. And really, it suggests that he does not care about the impact on American consumers, that he views tariffs as a weapon and perhaps a way of life for the American economy.
Okay. Jackson in Washington, thank you. Where does this leave America's closest ally? Trump confirmed yesterday he is serious about wanting Canada to become the 51st U.S. state. It seems the friendlier the nation, the more he attempts to force leaders to bow to his demands. Canada's Prime Minister is in France right now with other world leaders at a summit on artificial intelligence. Mackenzie Gray is traveling with him.
For the second straight day, Justin Trudeau ducking questions, instead only speaking on the topic he originally came to Paris for.
We cannot let AI pollute social media with empty slop and cunning disinformation.
For nearly 15 minutes, the Prime Minister focusing exclusively on AI, ignoring Trump's latest tariff and annexation threats against Canada.
As an example, Canada, if we make it in the United States, we don't need it to be made in Canada. We'll have the jobs. That's why Canada should be our 51st state.
The president promised and delivered a 25% steel and aluminum tariff, following a similar playbook to levies he brought back in 2018. But this time, Trump says there'll be a key difference.
And that's all countries, no matter where it comes from, all countries.
But just minutes after Trump said that, he contradicted himself, saying Australia could get a carve-out, something Canada is likely to push for. They were able to have steel and aluminum tariffs lifted in 2018 after being able to convince the Trump administration Canadian products were key to the U.S. defense industry. Trump's threats might have made for an awkward dinner tonight, hosted by French President Emmanuel Macron, with U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance also on the guest list. But the Prime Minister's office wouldn't say if Trudeau and Vance spoke. Earlier Thursday, Canada's ambassador to France promised a Canadian response if tariffs came in, and mused that the Trump-Vance administration might be complicit in violating UN rules.
It's not only to invade a neighbor that is against international law and the Charter of the UN.
Trump has threatened to take not just Canada, but also Greenland and the Panama Canal.
Unfortunately, for now at least, the U.S. administration is not as reliable as we thought, not respecting treaties as we thought. We need Europeans and Canadians to work very closely together.
That closer relationship has been a key goal of the government since signing a free trade deal with the European Union back in 2016, Donna. But since then, 10 different European parliaments, including France, have not ratified the deal, meaning it's only in force provisionally.
Okay, Mackenzie Gray in Paris, thanks. The U.S. is heavily reliant on Canadian steel and aluminum. Roughly half the aluminum used in the U.S. is imported, most of it from Canada, and about 30% of steel imports to the U.S. come from Canada. Canada is the fourth largest producer of aluminum in the world. There are 9 smelters in this country, 1 in BC and 8 in Quebec. 93% of Canada's primary aluminum is exported to the U.S., and the industry provides 9,500 jobs in Canada, 7,600 of them in Quebec. The U.S. buys most of the steel produced in Canada. It comes from 30 facilities in 5 provinces and directly employs about 23,000 people in Canada. Because of free trade, the North American steel market is highly integrated, and it moves back and forth across the Canada-U.S. border as things like vehicles are manufactured. Workers in Ontario will be among the first to feel the impact of tariffs on steel. They have gone through this before. The last time Trump was in office, he imposed tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum. As Caryn Lieberman reports, that does not make this moment any less nerve-wracking.
The towering smokestacks of major steel manufacturers dominate the skyline of Hamilton, Ontario. Right now, they're bracing for impact.
First we're zigging, then we're zagging, and now we don't know what the heck we're doing. And that uncertainty is not healthy. We're talking about $1 billion in GDP that is possibly at risk.
The threat of U.S. President Donald Trump's 25% tariffs on imported steel was enough to cause damage to businesses and workers.
Our orders are already slowed down right now. Overtime's gone for the guys. It is slower.
Stelco, which is based here, was bought a few months ago by U.S.-based Cleveland Cliffs. It agreed to maintain its unionized workforce, but it's beginning to feel the pressure.
Right now, Stelco has told us that they've put a freeze on hiring, and in a few areas they have cut shifts.
Hamilton has been down this road before.
In 2018, we had these tariffs at 25% on the steel industry for a year. They were damaging and devastating to the steel industry and really harmful on both sides of the border.
A condominium developer in Toronto estimates the tariffs could add between 1% and 4% to the cost of a new housing project, and that may give some developers a reason to pause new investment.
Looking at small margins of return already, you add a 1% to 4% increase in the cost of the project. If you haven't started yet, you might start to think, well, maybe we better wait till this thing settles down a bit.
New cars on both sides of the border will almost certainly cost more.
Certainly, if we're just narrowing in on steel and aluminum tariffs specifically, it will have an impact on, automotive manufacturing and parts manufacturing in Canada and certainly the United States.
Trump's tariffs may even be challenged in U.S. courts.
We still have a free trade agreement with the United States. These tariffs, whatever he signs, is likely going to violate that. So let's file an immediate appeal of that. Both Canada and the United States are part of the World Trade Organization. This is illegitimate by those deals.
Hamilton steel companies survived the last wave of U.S. tariffs, but not without experiencing major disruption. Caryn Lieberman, Global News, Toronto.
Canada's premiers were already planning to be in Washington this week. Quebec's Premier François Legault intends to point out that 60% of aluminum America needs comes from Quebec. In a social media post in French, he asked, would Americans prefer to get it from China? The uncertainty is already leading to hiring freezes and even layoffs in some sectors. And there are calls for government support for workers should the tariffs really hit hard. Heather Yurix-West explains.
Transport Fabreville Inc. is a small Quebec trucking operation, but if U.S. tariffs come into effect, its fleet of 5 could become even fewer.
These people don't have employment insurance. They don't qualify for EI. Most of them are contractors, so the effects will be devastating in my opinion.
In the manufacturing sector, layoffs have already begun in anticipation of tariffs. Last week, Quebec's South Shore Furniture announced 115 jobs cut. While garment maker ShearTech said it was temporarily laying off 40% of its staff.
We need a package in place for all the workers and all the sectors that might be impacted. We can't scramble after workers lose their jobs.
The NDP is calling on the government to expand employment insurance eligibility and increase payments for those who may be caught up in a prolonged trade war. Economist Moshe Lander agrees Ottawa should be preparing a worker support plan now.
It needs to be targeted. It's pretty clear which industries are going to get caught up. It's pretty clear how many people are going to be affected. Even if you don't have a precise number, you should have a rough idea as to how many that's going to get caught up in this story.
Though the owner of Fabreville Trucking says he'd rather government focus on cutting fuel taxes and opening new trade markets. Anything to help keep his workers on the road. Heather Yurix-West, Global News, Calgary.
Today, China's reciprocal tariffs on U.S. imports took effect. They include a 15% levy on U.S. coal and liquefied natural gas, and 10% tariffs on U.S. crude oil, agricultural machinery, and large engine vehicles. Last week, President Trump imposed a 10% tariff on all Chinese goods. The tariff threats have pushed Ukraine out of the headlines, but Russia's war is raging on. It has now been almost 3 years since the full-scale invasion, and Ukraine's president is wondering what Trump now intends to do. Volodymyr Zelensky says Trump's representatives are going to Kyiv later this week. The visit is expected to happen before the Munich Security Conference this Friday, where Zelensky will also meet with the U.S. Vice President, J.D. Vance. Trump has said he's also meeting Zelensky this week. It's unclear when that is happening. Trump also says he has spoken to Russian President Vladimir Putin about ending the conflict. President Trump has said he could cut U.S. military and economic aid to Jordan and Egypt if they refuse his demand to permanently take in Palestinians who would be forcibly displaced from Gaza. He says he wants the U.S. to own Gaza and develop it. Also today, Hamas said it will delay the release of more Israeli hostages in Gaza. It accuses Israel of violating the ceasefire terms by firing on Palestinians trying to return to northern Gaza and blocking relief from entering Gaza. Israel's defense minister has advised the military to prepare for any possible scenario in Gaza. And Trump says all hell will break loose if all the hostages aren't released by Saturday at noon. London's taxi drivers under the microscope. Coming up, why scientists hope cabbies could be key to helping further Alzheimer's research. This is not the French president, but it looks a lot like Emmanuel Macron, and he posted these AI-generated deepfakes himself to draw attention to the power of artificial intelligence. Macron is hosting an AI summit in Paris, and he wants France and Europe to become AI powerhouses. He told investors and tech companies to choose Europe over the U.S. Macron says the technology can promote disinformation and is changing everything from healthcare to energy, and he hopes the summit is a wake-up call for Europe. Understanding human intellect and behavior is a big component of developing artificial intelligence, and researchers in the UK are getting valuable information from what might seem like an unlikely group, cab drivers in London, England. As Redmond Shannon reports, their outstanding ability to memorize and navigate the streets is providing key insight into how the human brain works.
It's a skill that dates back to the horse and buggy, but feels downright refreshing today.
The UK's famous black cabs find their way around London's 26,000 streets without GPS, relying only on the wits of their drivers.
Left at St Pancras Way, right at Crowndale Road, left at Hampstead Road.
Tony Burnside is among the thousands of drivers who've had to study for the intensive memory test known as the Knowledge. It is said to be the hardest driving exam of its kind in the world and can take years. Tony says it only took him 15 months.
I kind of got into this job by accident because a friend of my sister's challenged me to do the Knowledge. Well, modesty forbids me from telling you who won that challenge.
But London cabbies get brain benefits along with bragging rights. It's been scientifically proven that on average they boast bigger posterior hippocampuses than the rest of us. That's the part of the brain that manages long-term memories and spatial awareness. Now an ongoing study is revealing more.
What scientists have found is that the longer they've been working, the larger the posterior hippocampus becomes.
That's important because it's also the part of the brain that shrinks in Alzheimer's patients. So there could be clues for researchers tackling the disease. And technology trailblazers too are thinking about how to harness this unique brain power.
Researchers say these supersized brains of London cab drivers can even help improve the most advanced AI systems.
Their brains can run super efficiently at that, whereas AI takes a lot of resources to do the same. So there may be some tricks and efficiencies we can learn from London taxi drivers that can build better AIs.
So while AI and tech like self-driving cars could be the way of the future, they're no match yet for the grey matter in Tony's black cab. Redmond Shannon, Global News, London.
Ahead, the dangerous conditions fueling deadly wildfires across southern Chile. In New York City, jurors heard how a knife attack on novelist Salman Rushdie unfolded in a matter of seconds and how close he came to death. The details were part of opening statements in the trial of Hadi Matar, the 26-year-old accused of trying to kill the British-American author. Rushdie was stabbed about 15 times at a lecture in August of 2022, leaving him blind in one eye and with injuries to his head, neck, torso, and left hand. Matar could face up to 25 years in prison. In Guatemala, at least 51 people have died after a bus plunged off a highway bridge before dawn. The bus, believed to have more than 70 people on board, was traveling on the outskirts of Guatemala's capital when it was involved in a multi-vehicle crash. It fell more than 30 meters into a sewage-polluted stream. Images show the bus upside down, partially crushed and half submerged. Crews are still working to recover victims. In Chile, at least one death has been reported as firefighters struggle to contain a wave of wildfires. Flames have spread rapidly because of high temperatures, strong winds, and drought. A state of emergency was issued in 2 southern regions over the weekend, many people being forced to flee. Chile's president has ordered a curfew in the affected regions and claims some of the fires were deliberately set. Next, why this Canadian-made teddy bear is now stealing hearts at the largest museum in the world.
It still really hasn't even set in yet. I mean, I'm just trying to absorb everything right now, and man, I'm at loss for words. Like, this is just a dream.
That is Sydney Brown from London, Ontario. The Philadelphia Eagles safety is now the 17th Canadian to win a Super Bowl. The Eagles steamrolled their way through yesterday's game and in the process stopped the Kansas City Chiefs from becoming the first team to win 3 Super Bowls in a row. We're going to take a break from talking about tariffs to talk about teddy bears and a Canadian success story from Quebec. 25 years ago, a woman created a therapeutic teddy bear to help her sick child feel better. The bears became wildly popular, and they're now sold around the world, and they're even being featured at an exhibition in Paris. Amanda Jelowicki explains how the bear went from Quebec's South Shore to the Louvre.
We print the teddy bears here.
Maggie Nadine Lamarche says making her Bec Bobo healing bear is a labor of love.
So after we put on the robot.
The stuffing inside the bear is a patented secret. Lamarche only saying it's full of Canadian cereals. When heated, it produces humidity and aromas that soothe. Hundreds of thousands of people worldwide have bought it. And curators at the famous Louvre Museum in Paris found it so iconic, they recently included it in a teddy bear exhibition.
It's the highlight of my career, to see my products to become an art part, an art object.
LaMarche's story starts 25 years ago. Her baby was in hospital, constantly agitated. A former engineer, she researched natural products that could help. She discovered a unique mixture of Canadian cereals. She said when warm, they relieve stomach, tooth, and earaches, soothing colicky babies.
It's like about 30 seconds, and the babies will be more calm.
Initially, LaMarche sold the stuffed bear only to friends. She quickly ramped up her business, now selling the Canadian-made product around the world. When the Louvre emailed her last year, she thought it was a joke. But when she finally saw her bear on display, she felt stunned.
I was very proud to see my teddy bears on the museum. It's like a big honor.
LaMarche hopes to keep making her bears for years to come.
I do that to help, not to make a big business or not to make money. My missions is to be able to relieve the pain of more than 1 million children.
A healing bear with a purpose, and now also a piece of art. Amanda Jelowicki, Global News, Montreal.
I could use one of those. That is Global National for this Monday. I'm Donna Friesen. Tonight's Your Canada is Trinity East, Newfoundland and Labrador. We'd love to see Your Canada. Please email it to globalnational@globalnews.ca. And thanks for watching. Hope to see you here again tomorrow. Bye-bye.